Good morning, Gearheads. Welcome to Speed City's coverage of the post-qualifying show for the Formula One Hungarian Grand Prix. This is John Massengale, and I'm joined by Bob Varsha and Jonathan Green. Mr. Varsha, how are you, sir?
You almost caught me in mid-coffee swallow there. I'm great, John. Good to be with you guys again.
You too, Bob, and good to hear you having some coffee and get you fired up for some commentary here. Mr. Green, how are you, sir?
Yes, I agree with the shepherd's pie analogy. It can all go horribly wrong if you start messing with the simple ingredients of.
Hey, guys, we have someone other than Max Verstappen on pole. I am excited. Lewis Hamilton on pole. How about that, guys?
Yeah, this kid's got potential.
Yeah.
9th pole at the Hungaroring, and that's a Formula One record. And, man, talk about a clutch lap. Given all the problems Mercedes has had, Russell goes out in Q1 through no fault of his own, I suppose, and Hamilton comes through with this brilliant lap. I mean, the commentators said it on TV as he took off. He said, "There's pressure on him now because he's got to get up there, and he's got one shot at it, and he did it."
I'd love to be a fly on the wall in the Mercedes debrief, though, because King George is going to wield the sword.
Yeah, I thought Russell's Corral interview was pretty even-handed, though. You know, he said, "Look, you can't blame the other drivers. At this point, there is no gentleman's agreement. This is a do or die kind of racetrack in a qualifying session where there were so many questions about whether you're on the right tire at the right time, where the grip is, and so on and so on." So I thought he was very fair to everybody. He just said, I shouldn't have been where I was, and I couldn't save the situation. And you know, he wasn't that far off, but he said, "I was on the outside when I launched off the final car onto the front straightaway, could not get up to speed, and I was 3/10 behind at the first corner." So tough, very tough.
Yeah, that was probably that may not have been the biggest surprise, but that was definitely one of the big surprises. But another key point here, Daniel Ricciardo through to Q2 and out qualified Tsunoda. I think he's ticked that first box. What do you think, guys?
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, especially with that car. You know, there's no question the AlphaTauri is a bit of a crap wagon, relatively speaking. You know,
that's
and
a German expression, yes.
Right.
The crap wagon.
Yeah. Nick DeVries couldn't do anything with it. And just see the comments made this week by Yuki Tsunoda, who was very complimentary, even compared Nick DeVries to Niki Lauda's incredibly precise ability to relate what the car was doing. His feedback to the engineers was Lauda-like, which is really high praise in Formula One circles. So good on Yuki to say that, and it's a shame we don't still have Nick out there in a good car. But having said that, Danny Ricciardo got in, says it felt like I had never been away. And he showed that getting into Q2 with that boat anchor of a race car.
And the competitiveness across the board, we were 3.5 tenths across the top 10. And if you look at Daniel Ricciardo's sliver ahead of Tsunoda, I mean, it is incredibly tight out there. Again, like it's been all season.
Yeah, no question. But in terms of the format, no, it's not a winner for me at all.
Yeah. Jonathan, talk about that a little bit. I know you're not happy with this.
Well, because I mean, first of all, you don't do a change as big as this in the middle of the season. I know they're looking ahead, and I know the excuse they've given, or at least they quantified it by saying, "Look, we're going to get less tires to each race." Great, but as Martin said in commentary, well, then fine, give them 11 sets, but don't mess about with doing hard tires, medium tires, and turn qualifying, which for the purists is the ultimate time of precision and brilliance and speed that is qualifying for Formula One. This is the time. This is the go time. The race can be a lottery. It always is, because there's factors and you've got 20 cars. But qualifying should be about the fastest man at the fastest on the fastest car with the best tires and the rest of it. But now it's a tire test.
Yeah. And we talk about this every week. There's something that comes up that makes us say, or at least makes me say, that problem would be solved if they were allowed to test, which they're simply not allowed to do in the names of, cost capping, holding down the budgets. there's so many problems that would be solved, from guys getting experience with the new race cars to working out problems with new technologies on track. I mean, that's the reason testing exists. To just ban it because they say, well, it makes it financially unfair for the teams that don't have the budget to go testing. Well, welcome to the deep end of the pool, boys. This is what you've got to do. If you want to have a good show, you've got to have cars on track. They have to perform well. So, I don't know. I find myself being so redundant about bring back testing. Limit it if you want, but bring it back.
But also a qualifying hour like that doesn't take into, it doesn't factor in the weather, because if it had got colder as the qualifying had gone on, and Geunther mentioned this, as you said just pre-show, in that you're going out on hard tires on a relatively clean track, and you're not taking into consideration, in other words, it takes out that strategy. Christian Horner said that again. There's no strategy to it. You've got to run what you got, and that's why people weren't running tires in practice, which is why we arrived at qualifying. And even the experts like Ted and Crofty and everybody else, I felt for them in some ways, because they couldn't tell us, the audience, what was going to happen and who was the form guy. Anthony Davidson said, I've seen 2 free practices. I can't tell you who's right. Form. And I don't know that that's good for the sport at all.
I don't think it is, frankly. Part of as you rightly point out, Jonathan, qualifying is a race unto itself. You're not wheel to wheel with other guys, but everybody's watching the clock. Everybody's watching what everyone else is doing. And now you no longer have that option of going to a softer tire to try to get the lap you need. If you're out of position on the timesheet as the seconds are ticking down, you have no option. You've got, you're either on the hard or you're on the medium or you're on the soft, and you have no option. And it just takes so much away from qualifying, which, as you say, is the ultimate test of speed. Who can put up the #1 lap time? And by the way, that comment from Geunther Steiner, if you don't follow Geunther on Twitter, do it. His comment was terrific. He said, okay, so now on a cold track or a slightly damp track or whatever, we go out there on the hard tire, we all crash, and then what kind of a show have we got? Of course, Geunther used slightly different vocabulary than what I did.
Australian vernacular to explain.
There's nobody like Geunther. But I mean, he makes a good point. It's, what are we saving? Martin Brundle said something that I immediately cottoned on to during the broadcast. He said, you want to save tires, and by having 11 sets per driver instead of 13, you save whatever it was, almost 4,000 tires shipped around the world every year. Okay, fine. Just give 11 sets and let anybody use whatever they want from their allocation, which was the original idea, is that you get all these tires and you use them as you see fit, and go ahead with qualifying as we've known it. You just, have to get out there on the limb a little bit. If you need a quicker tire right now, you can go to it, assuming you're not on the grippiest to start the session. But no, I'm not a fan.
And John, the last thing I would say on this is, strategy wise, I can see that now we know what the medium tire can do. Now we know what the soft tire can do when pushed to the very limit in a very small window. It doesn't give the longevity. But from a strategy point of view, for example, you could probably look back at the times, but I think McLaren go faster on the medium, or at least in that window that we saw it in, than they do on the soft. So does that give their strategy away and potentially their pit stop numbers away? You can't overtake here. And that's another thing, which is last year's poleman is in 18th position because he's got a traffic jam. And I also have a real problem with that. Should there not be a rule that you cannot stack up like that? It's dangerous as all hell. And it's caught Russell out, and there's no gentleman's agreement. I don't know why they were even talking about it. When since the days of Fangio, there was no gentleman's agreement, and certainly Michael Schumacher never played to that, and certainly
those guys were gentlemen.
Yeah. So, but what I'm getting at is, I don't know if it helps the show at all.
I'd like to hear what the some counter arguments, because I'm with you guys. I don't see any positive here. I'd like to see what they say about all this. And who knows, this may be the last time we see all this. But the one positive is that it has given us an interesting little top 10 here today, because we have 7 teams in the top 8. And And look at this. Look where the Alfa Romeo team with Zhou Guanyu at 5th. I mean, Zhou Guanyu fastest in Q2 first time this year.
Because of this alternative tire allocation rule.
No,
they're up there because they brought a radical set of aerodynamic upgrades to the track. The press was talking about as soon as they unveiled it on pit lane. A brand new rear wing. They've raised the nose of the car. The front wing has changed, and probably a lot more that isn't even being talked about, particularly the underbody. So, we're losing sight of, oh, look, we got a much more entertaining grid. It's not the same old fast guy followed by less fast guy followed by less fast guy. But as we've been saying, qualifying is about your ability to do the lap time at the time. And, tying one hand behind your back by saying you have to be on this tire, that's not the kind of competition that we look for in qualifying. And, it improves the show. Why? By getting great guys out of position like George Russell. And on a track like this, he's not going to be able to pass anybody, although Nigel Mansell proved that you can pass on this track if you want to. Bad enough. But it just seems artificial. The fandom in motorsports generally is so hung up on gimmicks. Is push to pass in IndyCar a gimmick? Is the drag reduction system in Formula One a gimmick? Now is saying that you've got to be on this tire at this point. Is that a gimmick just to rough up the grid and give people something different? I'm not buying it. Not in qualifying anyway. If you want to screw around with tire allocations in the race, fine, we'll adjust. But qualifying is about who can do it.
Yeah, and if you're coming to the sport new and you're little Johnny or little Jenny and you're a big fan of the 63, it doesn't make any sense. But Daddy, he was pole last year. Why is he 18th today? And then Dad's got to explain that. And frankly, we're struggling and we study it as hard as we can. So I just don't, if we're all sitting around the living room with the whole family there and we're all supping on our cup of tea and making our shepherd's pie, I don't think it's an easy explanation for anybody.
We're sipping our bourbon. Which another point I wanted to make. In fairness, George Russell, part of his problem was the nature of the track. It's a track that evolves a lot because it doesn't get used a lot. George Russell found himself in the wrong place in a queue of all these drivers going slowly, hoping guys will pass them. So he'll be the last man standing on their final push lap. But that's not unique, even though it's very much a factor here in qualifying in Hungary. We've also seen it at a wide open place like Monza, where everybody wants to be the last guy out there. And at both tracks, we've seen races where guys they don't time it right to get their push lap started as the checkered flag comes out. And you'll see 5 or 6 guys, trundling around going back to the pits because they waited too long trying to put themselves in the optimum position on track. It's, I'm with you, Jonathan. Maybe we ought to think about some kind of a rule about a minimum speed during the final laps of qualifying.
That's a good one. Hey, I think we need to get the caller's opinion. Let's give out the phone number because this is a very interesting topic, and I want to hear what other people have to say. The number's 512-643-5483, 512-643-LIVE, and we want to get your opinion on this. But there's some other good stories here because
heck yeah.
I've been thinking about Hülkenberg. I looked it up while we were in qualifying. He's out-qualified Magnussen, I think it was 8-2, if I can bring that stat back up. But during the race, Magnussen they're tied 5-5 after 10 races. But I just thought that was interesting. And then I saw a story where Geunther Steiner said that Hülkenberg is the best qualifier that Gunther's ever worked with, and he has looked amazing and not just a little bit different than Magnussen. It seems like some big, huge gaps all year long.
And Magnussen, to his credit, it's not like he's fighting with one hand tied behind his back. He was the fastest car in a straight line in Friday practice. Granted, practice 1 was a washout, and practice 2, was sort of a bar brawl. But Magnussen's car is plenty quick. The issue in qualifying may not be that he is so bad at it, so to speak, but that Hülkenberg, as you just pointed out, is so good at it.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, we've been talking about gentlemen's agreements, and Gunther's shown how forthright he can be with the Schumacher incident, but Magnussen at least has a get-out-of-jail-free card, and that he came back and saved the team in many ways, or at least was asked to do that and fit in brilliantly when he did come back after a year off. So if there's anybody relatively safe in Formula One, I would say it's K-Mag, but he needs to buck up. There's no question. He has been out of sorts this season, all through the first half of the season. He needs to improve.
Yep, he definitely does. And how about those McLarens?
Yeah.
We talked about this before we came on the air. I mean, they came out of Silverstone, drums and guns. They had such a great weekend on a wide open track, one of the fastest in Formula One. Okay, so now you're going to tight and twisty Hungaroring. Will this thing work? Well, they found out that whatever package they've got on the car, it works. So McLaren must be walking on air right now. They know they've got a package for whatever the track presents in the way of a challenge. And I'll predict right now, I think they're going to be a big factor going forward in who finishes, all right, let's call it second and on back in the Drivers' Championship. And they could be the number 2 team in the constructors by the end of the season. I think they're that much improved.
And I'm a big 2020 hindsight. Is this not the same company that not 2 years ago sold their facility, one of the greatest in the world, to an American conglomerate because they needed the money?
That's right. They were at the precipice of the abyss, as somebody once said. And again, you know, I continue to be impressed by the way Zach Brown's management style is working. I don't know for sure. The next time I see Zach, I'm certainly going to ask him. He's a marketing guy. So he's out there finding the money, finding the sponsors, keeping the team safe. And he's done a miraculous job of it, I have to say, he and his team. And I suspect he walks around and looks through the window at the engineering teams. He's not messing with, you know, what kind of a race car we design and build. We've got experts that we pay a lot of money to do that, and I'm going to let them do it. And lo and behold, you know, McLaren seems to have their ship in order. Now they have money and a good car, and obviously a good staff and 2 hellacious young drivers.
All right, guys.
McLaren's got more stickers than John Massengale has.
They don't have the passion for stickers that I have, though. All right, guys, we're on the precipice of a break. We're going to do that now, and when we come back, we're going to start taking a couple of callers. You're listening to Speed City.
Don't take us to the abyss, John.
Well played.
Back after this. All right, let's see who we got out there on the YouTube. I don't even have Facebook up, guys. I'm sorry, but Andy P says, I'm right with you there, Johnny Green. All for sustainability, but this is not a good way to do it. Did not like this alternative tire format from the moment it was announced.
Yeah, Andy P knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, TW says McLaren backing up the upgrades. Yeah, he was on it before we were, because that is really fun to see. Who else? TW says, did they forget we're here? No, we're coming to you now, TW. Let's see. The Fliplex says, no more shepherd pie, please. No.
I will admit that I thought they went on a little too long with the whole shepherd's pie thing. But
yeah, it does get halfway through the season and you've been in each other's hotel rooms a little too much.
Right. That's Ted. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
You know, I just thought something else they could do, and I'm thinking of one of those beautiful high shots from the helicopter or the drone or whatever it is they're using. Limit the number of trucks a team can bring to a track. You know, do you really need 6 lorries out there?
But yeah, but also, who are we kidding here, guys? Sustainability, this is a complete show of brazen money and waste of time. People, little boys going around a track, going round and round. It's hardly, you know.
So I guess you got to have a little of that in your life. Is that what you're saying, Jonathan?
Yeah, I love it. I've just got
little excess kind of brings the spice to life.
Well, you know what I'm saying. It's kind of like,
yeah, absolutely.
I think, I mean, you know, GM will argue that the reason they're going into Formula One or they want to go into Formula One is because of the sustainability aspect. And Formula E has been a huge success, as is, you know, I don't need to tell you, Bob, you've been across it. So has the Extreme E, or, you know, the Desert one. And, you know.
Here we go.
Get it.
Hi, this is Gene Haas, and this is Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
All right, welcome back to Speed City. We're talking about the Formula One Hungarian Grand Prix qualifying that we just watched. and we have a caller on the line. If you want to join the show, you can call 512-643-5483, 512-643-LIVE. And we have Bryn. He's called before. Bryn in Alabama. Hey, Bryn, how are you?
Good morning, gentlemen. I'm great, thank you. Get in there. I'm so happy for Lewis to get a pole.
Mm-hmm. That sounds like a good old Englishman or Welshman.
A Welshman, yes.
I heard.
With a name like Bryn, he has to be Welsh.
Yeah. Spelled with a Y?
Yep.
Yeah. First time I ever heard that expression, get in there, was when my old pit reporter, James Allen, became the lead announcer for ITV in England. And Heikki Kovalainen Jensen Button won not his first, I think that was in Canada, but he won in Hungary anyway. And James Allen went nuts and screamed, get in there.
Yeah.
And I thought, get in there. What? That's like listening to David Hobbs and we'll all go to the bottom of our stairs.
Bryn will, I'm sure, inform us, but I think it's a soccer expression. Get in there.
What do you think, Bryn?
Yeah, I think it is, yeah. But I want Lando to do a get in there tomorrow, get between Lewis and Verstappen. so Lewis can have a chance to get away from the DRS of the Red Bull. I'm really looking forward to the race. I'm a truck driver like Corvette Mike, so all I get a chance to is listen. So I'm really thankful for your show and the coverage. So yeah, looking forward to the race and get in there, Lando, tomorrow. Get in between Lewis and Verstappen.
Hey, Bryn, what do you think of the format?
The tire allocation, you mean?
Yeah, the qualifying thing with the hard tire, medium tire, soft tire.
Oh, I quite liked it actually. It made
all right.
It's the same for everybody. So it's down to the driver. So it's not as if one was on soft and one was on hard. They were all on hards, and it was up there to them to work out the track position. And yeah, I feel sorry for George, but it was down to him really to a certain extent. So it made it exciting listening to it on the radio, to be honest with you, and to get 7 manufacturers in the top, in the push for pole was quite exciting. So yeah, it's made a change.
Yeah, good.
Okay.
Good to get that perspective, because we've been dogging it pretty hard.
I can tell Bryn is fully American now. He called himself a truck driver, not a lorry driver.
That's true. He probably drives lorries in his days off.
Well, thanks for calling, Bryn. We appreciate it. We appreciate your insights there. Appreciate it. All right, guys, let's see what else we got here. I'm going to look at the finishing order here, because we've talked a lot about the top 10. We haven't talked about the Ferraris, because Carlos Sainz did not make it into Q3. I mean,
did you notice the margin?
6 thousandths or something minute.
And he can't. Yeah. No, there was 3 of them. There was 3 of them, and there was 3 thousandths between him being out and the other 2 being in. And he said on the radio, no track limits. In other words, the hope.
I didn't go over.
Yeah.
Oh, one we have.
Remember, this is the track that produced the only 3-driver exact matching times in Formula One history. They talked about during the show a little bit. I can't remember what year it was, but it was Michael Schumacher, Jacques Verstappen, Jacques Villeneuve,
and Heinz-Harald
Frentzen.
I think it was
90th of a second.
I think it was 96.
Was it? Well, it would have been about that time, I guess.
Yeah. I'll look it up for tomorrow.
Heinz-Harald wasn't around that long, but
no, that's true.
And we haven't talked about the Aston Martin team. Alonso down in 8th, and this is only the second time he hadn't qualified in the top 10. Top 3 this year. Second time.
No, he was like 8th or 9th at Silverstone, wasn't he?
That's what I mean.
The point is, Alonso said, I'm going to make the podium in every race for the rest of the season. Okay, we'll give him, a little bit of breathing room on that one, but I think it's worse than he anticipated. They've fallen behind a little bit somewhere, and Alonso is well back there.
Yeah.
And, and I would put that down to Mercedes power customers not having as good a car as the factory team at this point, because if you notice, Williams in a straight line at Silverstone, very fast. Aston Martin have proved they're in a straight line fast, but both of them have those Mercedes things. And when that's negated in a track like this, that could be showing up other aspects of the car that aren't as good as the factory Mercedes.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I wanted to mention, Casey reminded me, our producer, that Chris Medlin is not with us this weekend. I meant to say at the top of the hour. He is enjoying a weekend off. And so we're not going to get the live interviews today.
No. Yeah, exactly.
Hey, he went to a wedding. A wedding.
Yeah. A wedding. What kind of rubbish is that?
Well, really? I mean, can't you just sort of excuse yourself and let the groom have the ring now and run out back and get on with us for an hour? For
Is he going to commentate on the bridesmaid? I mean, really?
I mean, well, I'd kind of like to hear that myself.
Yeah.
Anyway,
he's got a microphone.
What is that man from New Jersey got to say? It sounds interesting.
Yeah, let's hear from John of New Jersey. Hey, John, welcome to the show.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning. For a couple things, but first off, I can't tell you how much I really appreciate the broadcast. I work Saturdays and Sunday mornings, and I don't get to see the feed, but I get to hear it. So thank you, gentlemen, and thank you for the pre-race and post-race. It means a lot. I love Chris's candid interviews, which we won't have this weekend, but I love his candid interviews, in pit lane or in around the drivers and owners. But a couple things. The tire allotment, I think, is beef. It's a rolling crap wagon. Thank you, Bob. It is. Trying to make everything equal. Let the teams be who they are. Let them do what they do best. That's their strategy. It's not about making everybody equal or tires or I don't know. I think it's a huge crap wagon on wheels. And maybe you have an answer for this question. I have more of a comment. When we're listening to the BBC feed and they say we're going to so-and-so for a report, it cuts out. Is it just on my end on SiriusXM, or does it cut out for you too?
No, it's cutting out for us too. I think it just depends on, it's actually different week to week, but I've heard what you're talking about. That is a little confusing. And we've actually mentioned that. So that's something that we can check into for you. Good point.
I can relatively answer that. You are listening to the BBC 5 Live coverage, which is across Great Britain, and it is part of their day's coverage of sport. 5 Live do sport and news. And so when they cut out to soccer or cricket or the World Cup or whatever it might be, that's what they're doing. So it is unfortunately a compromise. They are not dedicated as a world feed, which I've been part of in bike racing, but they are not a world feed. They are the BBC's coverage. And we, as Sirius and other companies in Australia, New Zealand, also take that radio feed. And they're the only purveyors at that level of radio commentary. Now, if you want to send me, Bob and John, to each race, we'll happily do it for you.
Absolutely. And we promise not to break up.
Yeah, there would be nothing better. I really appreciate you, gentlemen, and appreciate your insight and your comments and your opinions. Your opinions are really important to me as a listener and a fan.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Kind words, John. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's see. What else we got, guys? I'm thinking about Logan Sargeant. Not a good qualifying for Mr. Sargeant, our American. What do you think, Jonathan?
Yeah, no, terrible. I mean, he came on the radio immediately and apologized. It was just a bad day at the office. He was bouncing over curbs. He did that classic. I mean, it's a go-kart circuit, as we mentioned, without the walls. And unfortunately, if you make one mistake in a rhythm circuit like this, it can bite you. It can bite you hard, and you never get that lap back. And then you start making silly mistakes trying to get it back because you've lost the rhythm.
Right. Yeah. And this is a track he's known from his Formula 2 days. So, there's no inexperience factor. Granted, a Formula 1 car is a raging beast compared to the Formula 2 machinery with over twice the horsepower. But still, I think Logan is being fair to himself. If he said the driver let the team down, then I'll agree with that. And the team on the radio seemed supportive. Said, look, we win and lose as a team.
Yeah, and he's had some decent momentum lately, right? With what happened to Nick DeVries, everybody gets a little uncomfortable, and I'm sure he did too. But he's had a pretty good run of it lately, and they're going to give him the time. Apparently, they're going to give him the time.
And he arrives in Formula One at a time that Albon is rebuilding his career, having been wasted by Red Bull.
Yeah,
and he's at the top of his game. There's no question that Albon is driving very, very well.
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. And I hope they do give Logan Sargeant the right opportunity here. Not only just the time to stay in the car, but the right support within the team. And it kind of feels like they are. So I'm happy to see that. What about Lance Stroll down in 14th behind his teammate, 6 places behind his teammate again, guys? I know we don't have the same situation there. It's quite the opposite of Red Bull. His seat would probably be about as secure as anybody. But, we're not seeing the performance. I'm going to look at his head-to-head stats here, but what do you guys think?
Well, I think you're talking about momentum when it came to Logan Sargeant. I think Stroll had that same sort of momentum in recent races. He looked to be almost even Steven with Fernando Alonso in qualifying, but then he would sometimes fade in the race. I don't know. Obviously, Alonso is not at his best right now, and we'll blame the car for that. So it stands to reason, I guess, that Lance Stroll would have similar problems.
Yeah, I agree with that. And even though the stats you just put up there, John, Alonso 9-1 in the race, Alonso 8-2. I mean, he's whooping Lance Stroll for sure. But this is Alonso again. I talked about Albon having a comeback. I mean, this is a man living a new life. I mean, he thought his career was over, and we're now seeing the very best of one of the greatest drivers of all time that won't unfortunately go down as that. He may get another world title, but he's not going to be in the rarefied air of 8 championships.
Yeah.
But I couldn't help sitting there watching him go around thinking he was here 20 years ago.
I know.
His first win was here 20 years ago.
Right. I mean, there's a couple of guys on the grid who were about 1 or 2 years old when Fernando Alonso first showed up at the Hungaroring. Yikes.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I thought that was a great stat. All right, well, let's get our last break in. And when we come back, we'll have continued coverage of the Formula One Hungarian Grand Prix post-qualifying. Back after these messages. All right, we're still live on YouTube and Facebook. Thanks, Flippix. He's got to take off. He said, great show so far, but get an early exit. We'll watch the replay. Paul Bryan has chimed in. I can't wait to read this. What does he say? Medlin should get only his race-off weekend of wedding duty if it's his wedding. And that's
right.
And that's even questionable.
I agree with that. I'm with Paul Bryan on that one. Yeah.
He's such a sniper. Didn't we give Chris the weekend off when did he get married on a race week? No, he probably didn't.
No, he did. He did have a bachelor party. Was it his? And that's the question I never got. Was it his bachelor party he took one weekend off?
I'll have to look back.
Oh, that's funny.
Maybe your honeymoon will give you a break, but not for the wedding ceremony, for crying out loud. You can run down to the courthouse and get that done.
Yeah, no kidding.
Let's see. Kolo Mokolo says, Hamilton's on pole. I'm walking on air. That's all.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, there's a huge fandom here in the States for Lewis, and it has been, in terms of polls, it's been a bit of a doldrum era for him.
Sure, his longest streak without picking up a pole. So the poor guy who finally reaches his 104th pole position. I mean, that's a lot of weekends of putting your.
And you and I can remember the days when Bob. You and I can remember the days when Ayrton Senna's 65 seemed unbeatable.
Oh yeah, nobody's ever going to reach that number. Yeah, still putting his driver's seat on one leg at a time. We got hats off to AlphaTauri. Yeah, we heard they had new engines in the car this weekend, massive aerodynamic update. But for the first time, they got both cars in Q2. First time Zhou Guanyu has made Q3 this entire season. I said Q2. First time they've had both cars in Q3.
Yeah. And
Bottas, a former winner on this track, and he alone is responsible for about half that crowd, because this race is infamous for having a huge Finnish fan presence up on those hillsides. It's very close to Finland, and the Hungarian language is very close to Finnish in its etymology.
Hi, this is Karun Chandok, and you're listening to Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
All right, guys, there's somebody we haven't talked about at all, and I think it's a good thing, and that's Checo Perez, because having a quiet qualifying today was probably a good thing, although where did he finish here in qualifying? Ninth. At least he was in Q3. He broke that streak of 5 in a row of not making it into Q3, but at least he didn't have a giant mistake like he's had so many of, and like he had to start and off on Friday. That was such a massive error. I mean, I was stunned. He was so far off in the grass, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, the kind of thing we saw Nick de Vries do at Baku when he went out on his first lap and walled it. You know, how does a professional driver do that? But yeah, I will say this in Perez's behalf: he's not in danger of being replaced, I don't think, unless he, goes back to his old bad ways. I think he has found his true grit. I think he is about as low as a driver in that situation, in that car, in that team, where the expectations are so high. You have the tools to do it. If you don't do it, it's on you. And yet, he's had to go back to the hotel every night and look at himself in the mirror and say, you have got to fix this. Everything else is there. It's all laid out in front of you. And hopefully this is a sign that, yes, he is fixing it. And, he's going to be the driver that we know him to be. You don't win 2 races this year against Max Verstappen, of all people, without having, a few jewels in the necklace, as it were.
I worry, I'd like to do a complete podcast on Red Bull's philosophy of young drivers. If you notice, Liam Lawson was there again this weekend, and bar Ricciardo going to AlphaTauri, he could be in that seat now. And I just wonder whether the whole system seems like we build it all on. It's like the old Ferrari. We build it on one driver, which is Verstappen, and then Albon, Gasly, Kvyat. You can throw those guys away because they don't matter, and we'll just get somebody in there that can do the job of supporting Max. That's how it seems, cutthroat wise. And maybe that's exactly if Helmut Marko was having a beer with me and said, "Yeah, that's how I do it." I don't know if it's good though for the and Lawson is particularly close to my heart because I was there when he signed for Red Bull on his 18th birthday, and I had that doubt in my mind back then when he was a kid. Was this the right move because of the amount of? I mean, Hauger won today again. He's another Red Bull junior. There's so many out there that it just. That's my bigger issue is not so much Perez's form, but what that means if he doesn't perform. Like you said, you've got the tools, you better perform, because if you don't, and I worry perhaps oppositely to Bob, that I don't think his seat is safe, actually.
Really? Okay.
And thinking
given the system, I mean, it's a meat grinder, and I agree with you that you're never safe at Red Bull. Max Verstappen is not safe at Red Bull. Should his fortunes take a dip.
But that was the truth at Ferrari for many a year, especially in Enzo's days back in the day. But that philosophy of it's about the car being good and I get the best driver to drive my car, which is the best.
Well, Helmut Marko has such a track record doing this. And Jonathan, talk about his role with the team. I mean, he's officially head of driver development.
Yeah.
And we know he's an ex-lawyer, and we know what kind of those guys are.
And an ex-racing driver.
And an ex-racing driver.
He's a dentist.
Oh, dear.
He has done dental work on members of the team in his hotel room
against their will.
Yeah, right. That's how he motivates. No, he actually.
So you're telling me he's an Austrian dentist? Just open wide.
Oh God!
Don't bite down too hard.
No.
That I didn't know.
Guy coming at you with with tooth pulling pliers, and keep in mind that he's only got one good eye.
But I can see Dustin Hoffman in The Marathon Man all over again.
That's the Marathon Man is exactly what I was thinking of.
Well, hang on a minute, guys. It seems
Dr.
like he has.
Office.
It seems like he has more control than he should. Honestly, is what it feels like. And he's been impulsive. He's been impulsive.
It's a very Lauda role. Lauda played the same role at Mercedes, and I wonder how these cats get to be. I mean, Flavio was a bit like that, but he was the team principal, and they just kind of they go to their own drumbeat, you know.
Yeah, Flavio was also a driver manager, so that kind of affects what you're thinking,
and make sure that Alonso was in the right team, his team.
Yeah. Well, as we see so often, you know, it's hard to argue with the results that Marko has been a part of. He's a no BS guy. You know, the shortest bachelor party in history would be when Helmut Marko got up to tell a few jokes about the future groom. It's a very thin volume.
Well, I guess I'll tell you what it is. If the analogy is there, it's like okay, I'm running the women's soccer USA soccer team, which is you've got an abundance of talent. And you can put whoever the 11 you want in, because you've got 11 more that you can put on the field straight afterwards. Yeah. That's how good Red Bull is, which is everybody wants to drive for them. And, you know, they've got the car, they've got and Adrian Newey is one of the key factors. They've now, you know, it doesn't matter whether they swap engines or not. We're not thinking, oh, it's all going to go horribly wrong because they won't have a Honda engine. No, Red Bull are pretty bulletproof.
All right, guys, let's talk about tomorrow. Let's talk about the race. Jonathan, your man Lewis Hamilton, can he win this race over Max Verstappen?
Yes, he can.
Okay. All right. Bob, what do you think?
I think Hamilton can win this race.
Norris?
Well, Norris could win the race too. I mean, you know, they're up there qualifying, which, as we talked endlessly about earlier in the show, is that ultimate lap time. Now, you've obviously got the speed, so now you're going to back it down a little bit for the race. You need to get your strategy in order and all of the various things that go in combination into having success on the racetrack. But I think McLaren can do it. They haven't had the opportunity really to this point in the season. We know Mercedes can do it. And we know we've got Verstappen right there with the mighty Red Bull juggernaut. And then who do we get? Well, Piastri.
Well, what about Piastri? You know, Piastri's got that new floor after damaging it on the curbs. And I think he was a little bit tentative coming out. You know, we really didn't get much practice in the first two sessions. I say that. The second session, we decent. But my point is that Piastri may have been a little tentative with this new component, a major component. Who knows? I mean, he could be faster than Norris. We don't know yet.
Well, and that will make it interesting. That's really the only team with two cars right up there at the front. So if Piastri goes wheel to wheel with Norris, then what do you do?
Well, they've certainly got a great opportunity strategy-wise to try to pull one over as a team.
Yeah.
You know, and go against perhaps. I mean, if I were looking at it and I were McLaren tonight, I'd be like, well, look, Verstappen and Mercedes are going to go at each other. So and are going to watch each other strategy-wise and try to go identically. What can we do with our two drivers that throw something in the mix where one of them comes out ahead?
And the real surprise, even bigger than McLaren, would be Alfa Romeo with Zhou Guanyu 5th and Valtteri Bottas 7th.
That's where I was going. It's like you said, there's, you know, the only team up there, but Alfa Romeo sitting in 5th and 7th. You know, I know that the expectations probably aren't there, but they were obviously quick in qualifying. So,
and can I just say something? After 20 years of following Asian motorsport right from the get-go, sort of before there were any tracks and before Zhuhai and Shanghai and ever existed, there was no drivers. Alex Young had his moment, and there was a few Ho Pin Tung and a few others. But to have an actual Chinese driver at the front of a Grand Prix grid is fantastic.
Yeah, that is fantastic. I thought about that when qualifying. I was like, when he topped Q2, I was like, what? I mean, I didn't have any unrealistic expectations for Q3, but still, that's amazing. I agree, John. It's a cool story.
And you know, one of the things is that the Chinese public, because we haven't been to Shanghai because of the pandemic and because of the smog and so on, he hasn't picked up the Chinese sponsorship that they hoped he would get. But by word, if he does, wow, all bets are off.
Yeah, and I'll make a very delicate analogy, and it's to female drivers making their way up. Yeah. There are countries around the world with plenty of male drivers that just, you know, don't or didn't quite measure up, and bit by bit, as you say, Chinese drivers have come into the fold now. Alex Yoon wasn't Chinese; he was Malaysian or Indonesian.
Chinese Malaysian, yeah.
I don't remember. Yeah, but the point remains the same. We haven't seen a lot of drivers from there or Thailand or wherever. So with time, we will see them as long as they keep throwing the spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. You need a lot of young people out there trying to find the few that really do have the gift.
Yeah, and Joe did it right. He came to Europe as a young kid, and his English is perfect. He's done a really good job, and he's a super young man.
Mm. Yeah, we have a lot of stuff to watch for tomorrow. I particularly if we really are going to get someone that can compete with Max for the win. But there's so much to watch after the race. I want to see what Daniel Ricciardo can do in a race. Yeah, he got qualified Sonoda today, but what he can do in a race tomorrow and how these alphas are going to do. There's tons of good stuff to watch. And of course, you can watch and listen all of our coverage tomorrow starting at 8 a.m. Eastern, our pre-race show. And unfortunately, Chris is not going to be with us, but it'll be Jonathan, Bob, and I again. And of course, the race right here on Channel 81, ESPN Extra, followed by our post-race show tomorrow. So we got the full day of coverage for you. And of course, follow us all on social media. Bob, what's your social media? Bob Varsha on Twitter? That's your primary, isn't it?
Yeah, at Bob Varsha.
Yep. And Johnny, you're what? Speed Green
at
on
Speed
Twitter?
Green, and same on Instagram at Speed Green 1.
You need to get more active, baby. You are not doing a whole lot. All right, guys, we are out of time. Thanks everybody for tuning in, however you did. And we will talk to you tomorrow.